The Malignant Narcissist, the Alchemy of Terror. Beyond the Ego, the Dark Triad. Have you ever felt like you weren't just dealing with someone difficult, but with someone who seemed to take pleasure in seeing you suffer? Someone who, when you try to leave, does everything to destroy your reputation, your family, and your sanity. Today, we are going to unmask the most dangerous type on the spectrum, the malignant narcissist. What you will hear here is not just psychology, it is a survival manual. The concept of the alchemy of terror. Many people use the word narcissist to describe someone vain or who likes to be the center of attention. But today, we are going to take a step into the dark. The malignant narcissist is not just an inflated ego. They are the result of a deadly combination of three ingredients that specialists call the Dark Triad: pathological narcissism, psychopathy, and sadism. Let's look at a comparative panel regarding some types we have already described in other videos. The differentiation by catalyst within the process of the alchemy of terror. What distinguishes the different types of narcissism is the catalyst used for emotional transmutation. Although the goal of control is common, the ingredient that generates fear varies. In the Grandiose, catalyst is dominance. Terror is manufactured through force, overt rage, and the imposition of authority. Here, the aggressor seeks absolute obedience through the fear of an explosion. In the vulnerable, the catalyst is victimhood. Terror is distilled through guilt and emotional blackmail. The aggressor creates in the victim a constant fear of being the cause of their suffering, generating a prison of undue responsibility. In the malignant, the catalyst is cruelty. Terror ceases to be a tool and becomes an end in itself. It is generated coldly and deliberately to dismantle the victim's sanity and perception of reality, often involving sadism and pleasure in the psychological destruction of the other. In this profile, the obsession with one's own self-image narcissism merges with an absolute lack of remorse and ethic psychopathy. However, the seasoning that makes this type truly terrifying is sadism. While a common narcissist might hurt you by accident, being too selfish to notice your feelings, the malignant one hurts you by purpose. They feel genuine pleasure and a sense of omnipotence when seeing the power they have to destabilize another human life. Based on Laurie Holman's studies in The Narcissist on Your Hobby, we need to understand the crucial difference in goals. The narcissist you usually see out there is like a black hole of need. They want you to adore them so they can feel real. If you stop praising them, they wither or seek another source. The malignant narcissist, however, operates on a different frequency. They don't just want your admiration, they want your total dominance. As Holman describes, for this profile, their security depends on your destruction. They don't feel big only by standing on the podium. They feel big while stepping on someone. They see your autonomy, your joy, and your independence as a personal affront that must be crushed so that their order is maintained. One of the biggest mistakes victims make is thinking the narcissist doesn't understand them. Wendy Bahari in Disarming the Narcissist warns us about the dangers of underestimating their perception. The malignant type possesses what we call cold empathy. They can read you perfectly. They identify your insecurities, your childhood traumas, and your greatest fears with the precision of a surgeon. But instead of using this information to comfort you, they catalog it as ammunition. They use the pain of the other as fuel for their own grandiosity. When you cry or beg for mercy, they don't feel compassion. They feel that the world is in the right order, where they are the master and you are the object. It is a perverse inversion of humanity. Your suffering is the final proof that they are superior. A being above the moral laws that govern ordinary people. They don't just lack empathy. They have a refined psychological torture tool. If you feel like you are walking on eggshells, not because the person is sensitive, but because they seem to feed on your despair, understand, you are not dealing with someone who is just difficult. You are facing the personification of the Dark Triad. And understanding this isn't just learning theory. It is the first step toward saving your own life. The engineering of destruction, the cycle of the malignant predator. If, in the previous chapter, we understood the anatomy of the Dark Triad, now we need to enter the engine room. How does this predator operate on a daily basis? The malignant narcissist does not enter your life by accident. They perform what we call a planned invasion. Unlike the common narcissist, who seeks admiration, the malignant one seeks your total capitulation. 1. Love bombing as terrain reconnaissance. Many people confuse love bombing with an excess of passion. In the case of the malignant narcissist, it is an espionage technique. They are not just being charming. They are conducting a surgical mapping of your vulnerabilities. In this phase, they present themselves as the healer of all your past wounds. If you had an absent father, they will be the constant presence. If you were betrayed, they will be the paladin of fidelity. But there is a perverse detail. While they praise you, they observe what makes you cry. They store every trauma you confess as ammunition for the future. Their love is, in fact, the installation of an emotional Trojan horse. They enter smiling so they can destroy from within. 2. Invisible isolation and the seed of doubt. For the alchemy of terror to work, the narcissist needs you to be in an echo chamber, where the only voice you hear is theirs. But they don't do this by forbidding you to go out. That would be too obvious. They use selective social invalidation. They begin to plant seeds of doubt about the people who love you most. They will say, with an air of false concern, "Have you noticed how your best friend acts strange when you achieve something? Or your mother loves you, but she is very controlling, don't you think?" The goal is that, gradually, you begin to pull away from your support network of your own volition, thinking that only they truly understand you. When the terror begins, you will look around and feel alone, ashamed to ask for help from the very people you pushed away. 3. Gaslighting as an exercise in sadism. The disintegration of reality. Here, we reach the heart of perversity. In common narcissism, gaslighting is usually a defense tactical lie used to cover up a mistake or a betrayal. In malignant narcissism, however, gaslighting ceases to be a shield and becomes a weapon of attack. It is a refined tool of psychological torture. They don't just lie to get away with something. They lie to watch you doubt your own sanity, feeling a dark pleasure as they witness your mental confusion. Imagine the scene. They will deny things that were recorded, move objects around the house, and distort obvious facts with a terrifying calmness, looking into your eyes while sustaining the lie. If you confront them with undeniable proof, they will not feel shame or regret. On the contrary, they will attack your cognitive ability to process reality. They will say that you are too stressed, that your memory has always been flawed, or that you need urgent psychiatric help. The malignant's pleasure is not in winning the argument, but in seeing your nervous breakdown. They feed on the moment you start looking for keys they hid, or when you start apologizing for things they did themselves. For the malignant, your despair is the final proof of the absolute power they exercise over your mind. It is what we call reality hijacking. They assume the role of the narrator of your life. Gradually, you stop trusting your own eyes and ears to trust their version. It is a process of erosion. Today they deny a sentence, tomorrow they deny an entire event, and after a while, you feel like a ghost inside your own skin, not knowing what is real and what is invention. In malignant narcissism, gaslighting is the moment when the aggressor feels like a dark god, deciding what should or should not exist in your consciousness. They don't just want you to believe their lie. They want you to lose the ability to believe in yourself. For the smear campaign, this is the masterstroke of the malignant narcissist. They begin to destroy you socially, long before you realize the relationship is over. They position themselves to the world as the heroic victim who endures an unstable, crazy, or abusive partner. They tell your secrets to friends and family, always with a tone of pity. I'm very worried about her mental health. She's having bouts of paranoia. Thus, when you finally explode, due to the abuse, what we call reactive abuse, they use your reaction as proof that they were right all along. They steal from you not only the present, but also your reputation and your right to be believed. The isolation becomes complete. You are trapped in a labyrinth where your abuser is seen as your savior by society. The invisible prison, trauma bonding, and the erosion of the self. If you have ever wondered why victims of a malignant narcissist stay so long by their abuser's side, even after identifying the malice, the answer does not lie in a lack of character or weakness. The answer lies in a devastating biological and psychological engineering called trauma bonding. In malignant narcissism, this bond is not just a common emotional dependency, it is a brain chemical addiction comparable to the use of hard drugs, where the aggressor simultaneously becomes the wound and the only apparent remedy. The biochemical roller coaster, intermittent, reinforcement and addiction to pain. The malignant narcissist is a master at alternating between cold cruelty and sudden moments of calculated kindness. This creates what experimental psychology calls intermittent reinforcement. Imagine a game of chance. You lose almost every time, but the hope of that rare victory keeps you addicted to the machine. In your life, this works through a cycle of reward and punishment. After a night of psychological torture, punitive silences, or disproportionate screaming, he wakes up the next day acting as if nothing happened, bringing your favorite coffee, or making a promise of change. This crumb of affection causes a sudden flood of dopamine and oxytocin in your brain, which desperately seeks relief from the previous terror caused by cortisol and adrenaline. You begin to live in a state of anxious hypervigilance, scanning his mood every second, waiting for the next dose of validation that proves that sweet person from the beginning still exists. The malignant one knows exactly when to give you this dose to keep you from leaving. He manages your despair with the precision of a drug dealer. The erosion of identity, the psychological murder of the self. One of the darkest effects of living with a malignant profile is the total loss of your essence. For the malignant narcissist to feel omnipotent and grandiose, you must become small, fragmented, and, ultimately, non-existent. He initiates a systematic attack on the foundations of your personality. If you are an intelligent woman, he will transform your mental clarity into arrogance. If you are independent, he will label it as coldness or selfishness. He criticizes your musical tastes, ridicules your ambitions, and questions even the way you organize your thoughts. Over time, you begin to monitor yourself 24 hours a day, filtering every word and gesture to avoid the next attack. This process is called depersonalization. You stop laughing, abandon your hobbies, and become an empty shell of who you used to be. When you look in the mirror, you no longer recognize the vibrant and authentic woman from before. You begin to see yourself only through his eyes, as someone flawed, incapable, and unworthy of love. This is the pinnacle of the alchemy of terror, the transmutation of your inner gold into psychological ashes. Practical examples of sadistic sabotage in daily life to identify malignant sadism. Observe how he reacts to your success and your joy. The malignant narcissist cannot stand to see light in you. If you have an important presentation at work or a family achievement, he will find a way to cause a monumental fight or a sudden malaise the night before. The goal is to ensure that you reach your moment of brilliance, exhausted, tearful, and destabilized. Another classic example is sadistic triangulation. Unlike the common narcissist, who triangulates to be competed for, the malignant one triangulates to see you suffer. He will make sure you know that he admires someone else, an ex-partner, a colleague, or even a stranger on social media, comparing her qualities with your supposed flaws. He observes the flash of pain in your eyes with silent satisfaction. While the common narcissist wants to be the prize, the malignant one wants you to feel like disposable trash, because the destruction of your self-esteem is what sustains his fantasy of superiority. He doesn't just want to be loved, he wants to be the owner of your pain. The labyrinth of guilt and domestic Stockholm syndrome. In the final stage of this imprisonment, the victim develops a form of psychic defense where she begins to justify the aggressor's atrocities. You find yourself saying, "He had a terrible childhood. He only does this because he's under a lot of stress." Or, "I just didn't know how to approach the subject carefully." The malignant narcissist cultivates and encourages this guilt. He projects his own perversions onto you with such force that you start carrying the weight of his sins as if they were your own. At this point, a painful phenomenon occurs. You become the advocate for your own executioner. When friends or family try to warn you, you become aggressive toward them to protect the abuser's image. This happens because facing the truth that you are being destroyed for the pure pleasure and sadism of someone who should love you is unbearable for the human psyche. The trauma bond works like an invisible glue that transforms agony into a distorted form of loyalty. Understanding that this feeling is not love, but rather a psychological warfare operation, is the only way to break the bars of this mental prison. The compulsion for risk, addiction, fraud, and the pathology of ruin. Many people ask if the malignant narcissist presents more impulsive behaviors, such as addictions and betrayals, than other profiles. The answer is a categorical yes, but with an added layer of cruelty that other types do not possess. While a common narcissist might betray out of a desperate need for validation, the malignant one betrays, spends, and deceives out of a need for omnipotence and an absolute contempt for moral and legal rules. 1. Betrayal as a torture tool. Active triangulation. In the grandiose narcissist, betrayal is usually about the ego. They want to be desired by many people to feel special. In the malignant narcissist, betrayal is a message of discard and dominance. They rarely hide the betrayal carefully. They leave intentional traces for you to find. Practical example. They might leave their phone unlocked on a compromising conversation by accident, or leave a receipt for a motel or an expensive gift for someone else in a pocket they know you will check or wash. The goal here is not just external sexual pleasure, but the sadistic pleasure of seeing your reaction of shock and humiliation. For them, betraying is a way of saying, "I can break our pact, I can wound your soul, and you have no power to stop me." They feel a psychological high seeing you beg for fidelity, while they lie looking fixedly into your eyes, feeling superior for being able to sustain the charade. 2. Addictions, gambling, and the adrenaline of chaos. Unlike the vulnerable narcissist, who might use substances to escape pain. The malignant narcissist uses addictions, especially gambling and online betting, to test the limits of luck and reality. Because they have low fear reactivity, a psychopathic trait, they need increasingly higher risks to feel alive. Practical example: they don't just gamble for the money, they gamble for the adrenaline of betting what is not theirs. It is common for them to use rent money, children's education funds, or emergency reserves on high-risk bets. If they lose, they don't feel the guilt a normal person would. They feel rage toward anyone who tries to hold them accountable. They may even go as far as selling household items or the partner's jewelry to sustain the addiction, treating the other's assets as if they were theirs by divine right. Addiction, for the malignant, is an extension of their sense of being above consequences. 3. Cheating, embezzlement, and the engineering of asset fraud. The use of straw men. Here we enter the field of white-collar crime and cold premeditation. The malignant narcissist does not see the couple's assets as something built together, but as a resource to be extracted and shielded against you. One of the most perverse behaviors of this profile is strategic asset hiding. Practical example: they plan your financial ruin years in advance. A classic example is the use of their own family, especially the narcissist's mother, as a legal straw man or proxy. They purchase real estate, land, or open businesses using the fruits of the couple's labor, but register everything in her name or in the name of siblings. They want you to live in a house that, on paper, does not belong to you, turning your roof into a blackmail tool. If you try to leave the relationship, the threat is immediate. They and the family owning the property will put you on the street with nothing. This collusion creates a protective net where the family validates the fraud, treating dishonesty as the son's cleverness against a partner they label as unstable, for financial contempt and the incapacitation of the other. The malignant narcissist's relationship with money is purely predatory. They use finances as a tool for strangulation and control. They don't just want to be rich. They want you to be poor and dependent. Practical example: they may deliberately ruin your credit or your reputation with banks, convincing you to open a company in your name that they will manage irresponsibly, or running up massive debts on joint or additional credit cards. They might boycott your job opportunities, forgetting to give you important messages or causing exhaustive fights the night before an interview or meeting. The goal is your financial incapacitation. Destroying your material security is the final blow of the alchemy of terror. They ensure that escaping is materially impossible, making you feel that without them, you will starve or be homeless, while they maintain the mask of a provider and successful man to society. 5. The trail of destruction and the risk to integrity. It is fundamental to understand that the malignant narcissist does not pass through someone's life without leaving a deep and often irreversible trail of devastation. Unlike other profiles that seek only emotional supply, the malignant one operates a scorched earth policy. They are not satisfied with simply ending a relationship. They feel the need to see the victim annihilated emotionally, financially, and socially. The psychic damage is comparable to a post-war scenario, requiring years to rebuild identity and trust. Furthermore, it is necessary to warn of the real danger. Due to the component of psychopathy and the absolute lack of empathy, the malignant narcissist can, at moments when their dominance is threatened or when the victim attempts a definitive liberation, put the physical integrity of everyone around at risk. For this profile, if they cannot totally possess and control the object of their desire, no one else will. Understanding the gravity of this disorder is not an exercise in labeling, but an urgent measure of self-protection and survival. Rebirth from the ashes. from collapse to reconstruction. We have reached the most critical point of the journey, the moment when the alchemy of terror completes its cycle, and the victim faces a scenario of total devastation. For many watching, this account may feel like a mirror of their current reality. The malignant narcissist doesn't just leave scars. They try to erase your existence. 1. The scorched earth scenario, visible and invisible losses at this stage. The victim looks around and no longer recognizes their own life. The isolation that began in the earlier chapters, with small seeds of doubt, is now absolute. You find yourself estranged from your family of origin, often out of shame or because you were convinced they didn't love you. Your friends were pushed away one by one, either through his direct interference, or because you no longer had the energy to maintain social ties while struggling to survive at home. Material losses become concrete. Many people lose their jobs because chronic stress destroys productivity, or because the narcissist sabotaged meetings and important deadlines. You may find yourself without the assets you built, with the house in the mother-in-law's name, and without a cent in your account. But the most painful loss is the invisible one, the loss of your health. Insomnia becomes your only companion. The body lives in a state of maximum alert, fight or flight, and psychosomatic disorders arise, such as complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, panic attacks, and deep depression. You feel like a ghost inhabiting an exhausted body. 2. The awakening and seeking specialized help. A new beginning is only possible when the victim understands they are not dealing with a relationship problem, but with a crime of the soul. The first step toward freedom is seeking psychological help, but not just any help. It is essential to find professionals who understand narcissistic abuse and trauma. Conventional therapy, which only focuses on your role in the relationship, can be re-victimizing. You need someone who validates your reality and helps you process cognitive dissonance that state where you still feel love for the one destroying you. Strengthening begins with education. When you name what you lived through as malignant abuse, the aggressor's spell begins to lose its power. 3. The definitive cut. No contact without compromise to leave a malignant narcissist. There is no middle ground. Strengthening yourself for the definitive exit requires a war strategy. You learn that you should not give one more chance, because every chance is just another opportunity for him to finish destroying you. No contact is your only real protection. This means blocking on all platforms, not responding to provocations, not accepting messages from flying monkeys, and if there are children or legal issues, using the gray rock method, becoming as uninteresting and monosyllabic as possible. You stop explaining your version to those who don't want to hear it, and start saving your energy for the only person who matters, yourself. For the fresh start, rebuilding on solid rock, restarting life after malignant narcissism, is an act of bravery. It is relearning to sleep without fear, to eat while tasting the food, and to make simple choices, like the color of the clothes you want to wear. Financial and social reconstruction is slow, but it is built on a foundation of truth. You discover that although he stole your assets and your time, he could not steal your capacity to be human and empathetic. You begin to attract healthy people again. Reconnect with the family that truly loves you, and discover a strength you never knew you had. The victim dies so that the survivor can be born. The alchemy of terror is finally reversed. You transform the pain of destruction into the wisdom of freedom. You didn't just survive. You reclaimed possession of yourself.